Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I'm a senior instructional designer, program manager, author, blogger, podcaster, really just like overall certified learning nerd over here. And hey, my passion and my purpose is to be able to help you along your own instructional design journey. Whether you're a newbie and you are just starting off, perhaps you just heard about instructional design and maybe this is the first episode you're listening to, or you're a veteran in the field. You've been doing this for years and years, and you're trying to be able to improve your skill set with a couple of new tips and tricks and strategies along the way. All are welcomed on into the show. And of course, you can find more about my own information and all of my content over at drlukehobson.com. Folks, we have a special episode today because this has been a guest I have been wanting to come on the show now for probably over a year. At this point in time, it's actually been a while, and obviously, you already downloaded the episode, you're already watching, so you know who he is. But before I introduce our fantastic guest, I also wanted to be able to fill you in on a brand new announcement. My course over on Eduflow Academy called Collaborating and Building Relationships with Subject Matter Experts is now fully live and completely asynchronous. I heard from a bunch of you about how you weren't able to always attend all the different types of live workshops and sessions and the synchronous components of the previous course. So instead, I decided to be able to give you some more flexibility, provide some more offerings. So now there is a fully encompassing type of an asynchronous course and overall learning experience. So if you have been struggling to work with subject matter experts, if you've been finding it really difficult to be able to influence them, be able to influence change, being able to persuade with them, negotiate with them, anything of the sort, this course is for you. It's all my years of experience. It's all the strategies that I use when it comes to working with my own subject matter experts and how I've been able to develop this skill set and actually create a framework for you to be able to follow. So that way, the next time you are able to go and meet with your subject matter expert, you are going to know exactly what to do and when, and what I would essentially do if I was in your shoes. So you can go to Eduflow Academy to be able to find that. And of course, you can go down below inside of the show notes to see the link and be able to follow along. And of course, if you have any questions about the course, you can always reach out to me as well. So with that being said, let me tell you now about our guest. Today, we have the privilege of being able to hear and to learn and to listen from William Cronje. If you don't know who William is, you probably see me actually tagging him a bunch of times on LinkedIn and Facebook because William really has been my go-to person for the incredibly popular type of course over at Eduflow Academy called Instructional Design Principles for Course Creators. Now, this course is now running on its 10th cohort. It is a free 3-week type of learning experience for anyone to be able to apply and to get on into, which once again, I'll link that down into the show notes. But really, he has been my go-to person for everything. I'm one of the learning facilitators for the course, so I know it very well. And I talk to William probably on a daily basis about different types of things and new ideas and all these other different types of stuff that I love to be able to kind of, for this episode, peel back the curtain. I will want you to be able to hear and get to know more from William, his own journey about instructional design. I also don't think, to the best of my ability, with all of the 60 plus episodes we have so far, that I've interviewed somebody whose career has been more towards the learning platform side of the house, which of course there are instructional designers, obviously, as we're going to be talking to one for this area. So hearing more about that sector is going to be able to help you along for your own instructional design journey. We're trying to be able to figure out what sector do you want to potentially work in the future. Now, also, of course, everything beyond just William's own journey, but also hearing more about this entire instructional design course of just diving on into this. How has it functioned so well? How has it been able to go and support thousands of students at this point of time? We're on the 10th cohort. Many people have gone through this, and you've probably seen all the folks on LinkedIn sharing about their accomplishments, their certificate, and how much they love the overall program because it's great. And William really has been like the rock to hold that entire thing together. So I want you to be able to hear more about him, his learning experience, and all of the good stuff that he has went through to be able to help you as well. So folks, I am not going to waste any more time. Here is the one and the only William Cronje. William, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Luke.
Of course, man. Of course. I can't wait to dive on into this one. But before I get ahead of myself, would you mind just introducing yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. Firstly, I have a bit of a strange accent because I come from Cape Town in South Africa. My name is William Cronje, and my background is also a bit strange, but I think to some extent, maybe back in school, we were very similar learners. I remember from your book that, you mentioned that you were like also that type of learner is like easily distracted and not really interested in the like what the teacher was talking about and whatever. And I think to some extent that maybe makes us very critical of how like learning or how learning is facilitated or how like it's put together. So I think to some extent maybe we share that in terms of thinking quite critically about it. So when I left school, thankfully I graduated with pretty decent grades and everything. Then I went and I did a Bachelor of Arts, and then I did like multimedia studies and marketing. And for a really long time, I thought I was just going to work at an ad agency. And then I realized that I didn't really like marketing that much. And I stumbled into instructional design, as a lot of people do, and I just got absolutely hooked with it. And now I work at a really amazing place called Eduflow. And I head up Eduflow Academy. And Eduflow Academy's big goal is to change the way people think about learning online. We want to convince people that it's not just about quizzes and videos. It can be way more active, and it can be way more interactive and especially social. So we really try to, in our learning experiences on Eduflow Academy, connect people and create that sense of community as people learn. So that's I guess a quick introduction of me.
And you do a great job talking about everything, by the way, too, which I have a lot of questions about for you later on with Eduflow Academy, because that has been so transformative and so insane to see what that has become over the last year? 2 years?
Yeah.
No, it's been a year, right?
I think it's like a year and a half.
Year and a half, okay.
Yeah, I joined in October last year in 2021, and it's now.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
wow! Okay.
July 2021, and now it's 2022. It's been a wild ride.
Time doesn't make sense to me at all anymore.
Yeah.
I was just like, I feel like I've known you for 5 years when you're like, no, it's been like a year. It's like, oh.
It's because we've been through so much together,
Pretty much, man. Pretty much. So where I love, William, for you to be able to start with things is because of how I was thinking more about how in the day and the life kind of questions, because I'd love to know more about like your day and the life of working over with Eduflow. But I know for people out there, I don't hear as much about the day in the life of people working for an organization that's more focused on like a learning platform or learning experiences. Usually it's something more like kind of cut and dry. So it's kind of interesting that I don't hear so much about that. So can you just like elaborate more on like the day in the life of what it is that you do?
Yeah, people often ask me like, questions about, my career and like, how can I do what you do or stuff like that. And I always tell them that like I'm a very unconventional instructional designer. Not a lot of people will probably do the day in the life of type of stuff that I do. So I definitely don't think people should like take this perspective as like this is what instructional design is. And I think I'm very fortunate to be able to wear a lot of different hats in my day in the life. And it really depends on what the focus on is at the moment. So when I do kind of traditional instructional design stuff, it's I put on my design and development hat, and I do research and interview people and edit videos and stuff like that. So so that's quite cool, like fun, and then sometimes I change that hat out to become a facilitator, where we run our instructional design principles or social learning experiences course, and then it's all about supporting the course participants and facilitating workshops and stuff like that. Then another hat I wear is where sometimes on the Eduflow side, we work with Eduflow users to help them to use Eduflow as well as they possibly can. So, that's another hat that I wear. And then another one is iterating. So on the Eduflow Academy side again, as I'm facilitating, we're also updating the course material, finding out where people are getting stuck, or where a lot of the feedback is coming back as I'm stuck here. Then we have a very, very big privilege of being able to iterate before the next cohort. So those are some of the hats I wear. And other hats are also like marketing-ish related hats. So it'll be one thing I did recently was we conducted research about collaborative learning in the workplace. So then we collected and synthesized all of that information and wrote a really nice big blog post about that. And then there's other blog posts about instructional design or learning that we also work together on to put together. So yeah, that is the very strange day in the life of William.
I mean, it's funny because also our roles are really similar in nature too. I feel like there is almost this essence of the startup mentality that you're going to do everything. You have a bit of something where some days, as you were saying, it's research, it's marketing, you're doing promotion materials, you're running the workshops and the webinars and whatever else. You also forgot to mention too, but you have to deal with me like on a daily basis, pinging you about things. It's like, William, how do I do this?
That's more fun. That's not a job. That's just like catching up with Luke. So
yeah, fair enough.
It's a good point though. So the other one is, we've got a bunch of courses on Eduflow Academy. So another thing that I tend to do is, check in with you and check in with people like Heidi and, see how everything's going and see where I can help. And so that's also really fun.
Absolutely. So speaking of that, of Eduflow Academy, let's talk about the program. But I'm going to assume if anyone follows you on LinkedIn, if they haven't done so already, be sure to follow William. I'm going to put the links down below in the show notes. But everything that you keep getting tagged on constantly is for this program that you have in Eduflow Academy called Instructional Design Principles for Course Creators. And I would love to unpack that because that has grown so much. And it's just absolutely crazy to see where things have gotten nowadays after the 9th cohort. Is that what just wrapped up soon? 9th?
So 9th cohort was finishing up this week.
Yeah.
Next week. So that's wild.
That's insane. That's absolutely crazy. So I'd love to know about where did this idea come from in the first place to be able to do this, to bring all these people together? Tell me more about the background story for this.
Yeah. So, I think the origin story is that Eduflow Academy had a few courses before I arrived, and they were self-paced courses, and they still are really good courses, but they weren't getting a lot of traction, even though they were really good. And I think my big theory about why they weren't doing so good is because when people learn online, there's this big craving for doing it with other people, and that was missing in what we were offering. And then David, who's the CEO of Eduflow, we were just having a lunchtime chat, and I said, well, why don't we turn this into a cohort-based course, which is a way of doing a course with a bunch of people together, over a few weeks, and then you all graduate at the same time or a similar time. And David was like, let's do it. And then he just gave me like all the freedom I could need and gave me a rough timeline, and then we just did it, which was amazing because it like meant that I was able to use whatever tools and strengths that I had at the time to put together this course. And then I spoke to a bunch of really awesome people and did a bunch of research, and then we put together the Instructional Design Principles course that really makes the most of Eduflow's features as well. So we started with a cohort of, I think, 50 people as a pilot cohort, and we asked people to apply to participate, and we still do that. And it's a really nice way to ensure that we get people who are really invested in the experience to participate, instead of just, people who like, I'll just apply, kind of thinking this is kind of like a LinkedIn learning course or whatever. So for the first cohort, we picked 50 of who we thought would probably be the most critical people that we could find. So, they were academics and they were veteran instructional designers, and they went through the first cohort, and we got some really awesome feedback, and some really nice testimonials from them about this experience. And then we were able to build on that. And then since then, we've had, we get around 700 to 1,200 applications per cohort. And then our cohort sizes range from 700 to 900 we've tried once. And then we are on our 10th cohort that's coming up. And another cool thing is that we've got 800 testimonials that people have written for the course. So every time someone finishes the course, we ask them, if you want to, can you write a testimonial? And we've got 800, and soon there'll be way over 800, which is, for me, absolutely mind-blowing, that people will go out of their way to write something about their experience, to promote it for us, which just makes me so happy. And I read through them when I'm sad, and it just makes my day.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Definitely reading a review about all the work that you put in and people enjoyed it. It's a pretty cool feeling. And I remember too the cohort that was like the super massive, humongous cohort, because when I did my webinar about backward design for that one, I think there was like 250 people on the Zoom call at once. And I was like, okay. It's like, this is different. I'm surprised all of you are here. And of course, the thing too that always blows my mind is that this is all learners from all different walks of life, all different countries, and of course all different time zones. And whenever people come together, where you're going to have somebody who's joining in at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for like one of the webinars that are live, I'm like, why? Like, thank you, but why? It's recorded. Like, it's okay. But to your point though, that community aspect, people want to be on the calls together because of the breakout rooms, because of those sessions, because of all those things like that. So what made you actually wanted to make it into a cohort though? Because there's all different ways about how you can establish community. So why cohort-based modeling?
I've been thinking about cohort-based learning for a while now. And I think it's really interesting that to some extent we go through cohort-based learning experiences from the day we start school, or from the day that we, join the creche. Then you're in a cohort of creche mates, and then you go to grade one, and you're in the same grade with a bunch of people. So cohort-based learning is almost ingrained in the way we do things. And then when you leave, if you're fortunate enough to go to higher, universities or whatever, if you leave to join the professional space, all of a sudden this cohort-based learning approach is a very, very rare luxury. So to some extent, we've almost been conditioned into learning in this way. And the reason why this format has survived this long is because it's so effective. There's built into it, there's the social connection that we crave. There's also the accountability. There's the presence that you feel when other people around you are also learning and they're also sharing their ideas. It's just got so many ingredients that make it successful. And if anyone's interested in learning more about cohort learning, Wes Cow, who is the founder of Maven, or co-founder of Maven, she's got some really awesome blog posts that I recommend reading if anyone wants to dig into the space of cohort-based learning.
I mean, I love cohort-based learning too, because that was the model that my doctoral program used. And that was my first introduction to it, because as you mentioned, you go through it throughout your entire years of schooling and whatnot. But then that was when someone actually said the word cohort to me.
Yeah.
And they were like, this is your new family. Like, they're going to help you through with writing this dissertation. Like, you're not going to always have a professor to lean on or whoever, but you'll have a cohort. And I swear that is what has gotten so much of us through and actually finished the program, where for a lot of people, they get stuck in ABD limbo and they never finish. And then it's just like, it's done. But that 100% help. So did you have any experience beyond like going through high school and college and whatnot? Did you ever do anything with like you yourself were in a cohort as well too for a learning experience?
So apart from like, being in school and stuff, I used to work at a certain OPM that ran cohort-based courses for executives. And I worked there for 3 years, and I learned a lot about, putting them together and stuff. And a lot of the little tips and tricks and lessons I learned from that space, I was able to translate. And then all the guardrails were removed. I could really, really, take my own creative freedom in putting these together. And Eduflow as well is really, really, and I know I work for Eduflow, and it's terrible for me to promote Eduflow so blatantly, but it really makes it so much easier to just really put out or create whatever experience you want based on the idea that you have, speed networking, or we've got an activity where you can plot your name on a world map so that other people can see it. And we just do that by integrating with Padlet, for example. But yeah, I'll stop shamelessly promoting Eduflow for a sec.
No, I understand. Whenever MIT gives me like the academic freedom to go out and try like whatever, where I'm like, are you sure? They're like, yeah, let's just do the research, do the pilot, figure it out, get feedback, and let's see if we can make it work. And that's been amazing to be able to have that. It's been a blessing to try things, and sometimes they crash burn and they do not go well, and other times they do. So,
but we also always learn something from something that fails.
Yes.
And I guess it depends on how you manage risk and what the risks are beforehand. But if something doesn't work, it just means we get a lot of emails where people who are confused or whatever, and it means that maybe we need to iterate, or maybe we need to take a step back and try something else. But it's always really valuable to just give it a go. It could turn into something very, very valuable for the participants.
Makes sense. So as you were rocking and rolling and this thing was coming out for the first cohort and the second cohort, what was your response to things once you started to see people starting to talk about it within either the discussions or the community platform, or from tagging on LinkedIn and stuff? Like, how did you handle that? Because it really blew up overnight, to me at least. But
I to be honest, I'm still blown away by the response. It really is way more positive, and the feedback has been just absolutely mind-blowing. And I've really enjoyed building all of these awesome relationships with people like you, and with participants. And when I see the same people coming back over and over and over again for different Eduflow Academy courses and experiences, and webinars or roundtable discussions or self-paced courses. We've got people who have probably done every single thing, a course that we have out there, and that is just incredible to see this. These people who in the beginning I didn't really know, and now I feel like I know them really well, even though we've probably had one or two interactions. But I can see all their posts and the discussions, and I've learned so much from how they do things, and their backgrounds, and just how they learn and how they do it so enthusiastically. It is just incredible. Going back to your question about how do I respond, I have no idea. I've just been. Sometimes it's overwhelming. All of the different notifications and posts and tags and stuff, and I have to sometimes just put aside an hour to try to respond to all of these really, really amazing posts, and it just really makes me happy. It's been really cool.
Oh, absolutely. It's been crazy. I know, same thing too, that I've seen folks go and take my course on working with SMEs and then go jump into the IDPCC, and then other times vice versa, where they're hey, that fundamentals program is cool. Now I want to learn more about subject matter experts. I'm like, okay, great. So 100%. I see those same different types of folks coming in again and again. Now, one of the things that caught me by surprise 100% when we started this is that, I'm reviewing the curriculum. You and I are talking about things, and I was like, okay, this seems like it's going to be for newbies. And then I remember the first webinar that I did, and I'm seeing people, and I always ask the question when I start like a workshop is I ask usually like, how long have you been an instructional designer? Because I want to be able to get a feel for the audience and know if I need to be able to twist or pivot or do something else like along those lines. And for a lot of folks, they were aspiring instructional designers, they're teachers, they just started out as an entry-level instructional designer. But then I would see in the chat that someone would be like, oh yeah, I've been an instructional designer for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I was like, then why are you here? It's like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of for newbies, but I learned over time, and especially with talking with you, about how for a lot of people, they want a refresher, they want a new perspective, they have a bunch of different things. But when you saw veterans going into your course, what was your reaction like for that? Because it's made for one folks, but it can serve for all. So what was your reaction with seeing all these experienced IDs taking your course?
I see. I was also, and I'm still baffled. I have a bunch of theories, and I think these people are like the epitome of lifelong learners. True lifelong learners. Like, it's easy to claim that you're a lifelong learner, but if you come across someone who is like, a maven lifelong learner, it's these people who have 25 years of experience, and you think that you can't teach them anything, and then they come into a course and they seem to be the people who are learning the most, even though they have this amazing background. And I think that mindset that they have is something we can really learn from. This assuming this identity of someone, like when you enter a learning experience, assuming this identity of someone who potentially doesn't know anything. And I've got, going back to like maybe why they're doing this. Some of my theories are instructional design to some extent is a pretty lonely profession. Luke, you and I have like a rare privilege in the fact that we get to interact with instructional designers all the time because of what we do. You work on a team of MIT instructional designers, and I've through instructional design principles course and through Eduflow, I get to interact with a lot of instructional designers. So it's very easy for us to just find someone to talk about some super obscure thing like evaluating discussions, for example, which is something we spoke about earlier. But I think the advantages that we have might not be shared by these, super lifelong learning veterans. And it might be difficult for a solo instructional designer in a corporate organization where there might be an L&D team, but there's one instructional designer on the L&D team. So I think to some extent maybe you need that community of practice. You need those people around you so you can constantly learn. I think to some extent it's maybe altruistic. So there's in game designers have they talk about the Bartle player types. So you have in a gaming experience, you have different gamers who play games for different reasons. So you have like an achiever, for example, and an achiever wants to play the game to complete everything, or to win. Let's say like they want to be the top of the leaderboard or whatever. Then I can't remember all the profiles, but you get like a completionist, and a completionist wants to complete every single side quest. They want to do it 100%. But then you also get killers who are trolls. So they're there to disrupt, and they are the people who make everyone else's learning experience, or not learning experience, a gaming experience, quite terrible. But then you also get the social people who are there to help others. They get joy out of helping other people play the game, and I think that type of learner is to some extent this type of learner. They've got a lot of experience and they've got a lot of wisdom, and they have a lot to share, and they are willing to take some time out to help others, and in helping others they might get some joy out of that as well. So I think those people would be incredible mentors. And the insights that they can share are just absolutely amazing. And I've learned so much just from reading what they've shared or hearing their perspectives. And then the other reason that I can think of is the meta reason. So people are participating in the course to learn about how the course is put together. And I've read this in the feedback a lot, where people are like, they say that this is a really nice example of something that I want to do in my organization. So maybe someone wants to put together a cohort-based course for their onboarding team or whatever, and they're looking at this and they're taking notes on how it's put together and stuff like that. So maybe that's like, those are some of my theories, and like if any of your listeners have, or what, viewers now, I guess, since we're on YouTube.
I have no idea anymore. Yeah, just doing everything.
If anyone has any theories, or if you can point me to some research about this, I would really love to hear about it.
Yeah, but it's pretty darn good theory that you just pitched right there. I completely understood everything that you just said. I'm also a gamer, so maybe that resonates more with me, but I completely get what you said. That makes a lot of sense. I also love too, because some people reached out to me when they heard about doing some of the workshops and seeing some like big time names in instructional design were joining the program. And I had one friend reach out to me, and she was just like, aren't you nervous that you're going to be presenting in front of so-and-so? And I was just like, no, because this is my way. This is how I literally do things for a living. But what I found to be so helpful is that I don't have to answer the questions in the chat, because they respond faster than I can, because I'm presenting.
Yes,
and I just go down, and I was just like, oh, yep, he's got that. Oh, yep, she's answering that. Okay, great. Let's keep on going.
and to some extent, like I see these questions come up often, and I think about how I would answer it, and then I see someone who answered it way better than I could ever have done, and then I learn even from how they answer that question, which is really, really cool. I think there's so much value in tapping into the resource of the cohort. The people who are in the cohort are the reason why it's so good. The learning material and sometimes cohort-based courses are just a bunch of webinars together, but I think the people who are in there are the most valuable part. The learning material is secondary. It's the community that is the most valuable thing, and I think in terms of design, it's really, really helpful to think about how we can maximize that resource, which is the cohort.
Absolutely. And speaking of people and the cohort and learning from people, you taught me about something that I use now in all of my courses, which is speed networking. Not speed dating. I called it speed dating before. Very quickly corrected. Speed networking. So I would love for you to be able to share with the audience more about this tactic, because since I started using this for all of my courses, people love it and rave about it and feel far more connected than when I did not do this for anything. So tell us more about speed networking.
So I think one of the challenges of running an online course is showing people that they are sharing that journey with other people. The Community of Inquiry framework calls that presence. And then, it's this idea that that there are other learners. So if you're doing this in person, it's very easy, because you can see the other learners, you can see the facilitators. But if you're doing it by yourself in an online space, you need those reminders. And when we're putting the course together, we have to find opportunities to remind people that they're not alone, and that people have that shared energy or that shared focus. And the speed networking sessions were like a very effective way of doing it. So the way we just run it on Zoom, and we invite 60 to 150 people, depending on how big the cohorts are, to one Zoom speed networking session, and then we have like a big Zoom plan that lets us create a lot of different smaller breakout room sessions. So then we'll create like a bunch of breakout room sessions where there's 2 or 3 people per room, and then send them out for 5 minutes to get to know each other. And when we do the sessions, always like we give them an objective. We don't just say go and talk. We say, introduce yourself, talk about why you're here, and the third thing is to find something you have in common. And I think that finding something that you have in common is quite a nice, easy, low effort quest that you can get to. And then after 5 minutes, time's up and you come back. And people always come back like, oh, I wanted more time. And I think that's the whole point, is you want people to want more, because then they'll go into the next session, and then so slowly you like, if you from the facilitator's perspective, you'll see maybe like 20% of the cameras are on, and then by the end of the session, like 80% of them are on, because people have really gotten into it, and they come back and you just see them smiling and typing in the chat, and there's a lot of energy. And I think based on the feedback and based on your perspective, or like your impression, I think it's been quite good at creating this presence, and it's like an injection of energy early in the cohort to really get people motivated to participate and to get into it.
Oh, for sure. Because what I've seen within my own courses to be able to share those results is that after the speed networking sessions, then when I go and look at the discussion board posts, I'll see that they'll refer back to that networking session where it'll be like, oh, Cindy, it was so awesome being able to chat with you about your journey and blah, 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 blah. Can't wait to work with you more throughout the next like 4 weeks, whatever. And I just see that constantly. And especially too, since for most of our courses, we do incorporate peer-reviewed based activities where you are going to be working with your peers, when you actually know who the person is who's giving you feedback or giving you comments or something like that, it makes that type of feedback so much more receptive, because now you're not as defensive, because you're like, who are you? Why are you telling me to do blah, blah, blah? You're like, no, I met you. I know who you are. Or if I didn't meet you personally, I at least can remember your background, or maybe something you talked about within the session, something along those lines. That has 100% made the communication go from, at one point in time, feeling like it was forced to make people respond to discussion boards, where I was like, someone please talk. It's way too quiet. And then, by the end of like week 3, I'm like, okay, like I don't need to talk. Like you can do your thing. I'm just here to help with your questions. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, this is something we wrestle with so we've got another course that we've just kicked off. We're doing cohort 2 of it right now. It's called Designing Social Learning Experiences. And this is something we talk about a lot, because in a lot of learning experiences, let's say like if you want to set up a community of practice or something, and if it's online, it's very difficult to create this energy and people always talk about participation and engagement, but I think there are a lot of barriers to participation and engagement that we can't see, and that we, like they might not be like, it might not be that people don't have access to the internet or something. They are psychological barriers. And if you are expected to get to know a bunch of strangers on the internet, we need to really, really create. We talk about psychological safety, and we have to introduce all of these mechanics and all of these ways where we can make people feel safe enough to create that first post, for example. I think one of the interesting things to think about is setting the tone in terms of discussion forums and discussions. I've seen some discussion prompts, or like the general tone of a course, especially at like an executive level course, can be very formal. So to want to comment on the space where you've just seen these super formal English writing pieces where people like put in references and citations and everything, I can imagine like after reading that, it's very intimidating to create your own post where you just want to say, hi everyone, my name is XYZ and I'm interested in learning about this, and I don't really know about this, even though everyone else has posted about how smart they are. So we in the course design, we intentionally make our language very, very casual. We use like emojis, and maybe we won't write proper sentences and stuff, as long as it's it might will ensure that it's legible and you can understand what's being said. But it could probably be written better and more academic, but then we'll erode that not necessarily, but we might erode that sense of like vulnerability. So in our communication, we try to set the tone of saying, we model it, like if we want to think about Bandura, like we model a specific way of communicating, and we hope that other people replicate it, and then hopefully it kind of like jumpstarts that sense of safety, and then all of these underlying elements kind of like work together to hopefully foster this environment where we can get engagement, because we can't force engagement. We can try, we can say you have to post this much and you have to write this many words, but it'll be inauthentic to some extent, and it's like trying to motivate with the stick and not the carrot. So we want to really get that internal motivation to encourage people participation, and I think like things like that will hopefully have a big impact, and it's something we're wrestling with and we're trying to learn about at the moment.
I mean, I'm glad you said too, talking about emojis, because when we think about speed networking, I know for some people they're like, well, it's not gonna work for everybody because we don't all communicate in the same way. And we have seen it where people do communicate more via emojis, or they only feel comfortable using with the text chat type of a feature, and we've adapted, and I've learned a lot actually from how you've hosted and handled those things, as far as for making people stay in the main breakout room and having them come into there, and then of course we can facilitate and have a conversation in that place, instead of constantly trying to make people go and either talk about something that they don't want to talk about, or introduce themselves again for the 20th time and have to go and mention about the blah blah blah, where they're like, this is so tiring. And it's like, let's remove those. Let's just make that safe space, and then let's actually dive into the conversation instead.
Yeah.
So that's been cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's been really, really cool to see. So I now want to ask you a question that I know is going to be extremely difficult for you to answer. And I don't know if you have an answer, but because so many people I've seen on LinkedIn, I've tagged you and talking about the certificate, how proud they are, their accomplishments, what they've done with the learning experience. Do you have a favorite story so far of like one graduate and what they shared with you?
So I feel like it's like, like picking a favorite child or picking a favorite dog. I think in terms of my favorite things that I've seen is really the connections that people have built. When you're facilitating a session, or when you see in a discussion forum that two people have genuinely created a real connection, and that might turn into a friendship, that for me is what makes it all worth it. And I feel like I see this very often, where people will, like, on LinkedIn, for example, they'll share their certificate and then also tag some friends that they met along the way and share about what they learned from those friends or whatever. That for me is an incredible thing to see, because I've said it before, but I feel like instructional design is a pretty lonely profession, and hopefully by doing this we introduce people to a really big and very, very generous community of instructional designers who are absolutely incredible, and really, really smart, and I think when we do this together and when we create these opportunities, we get rid of silos, and then we also firstly identify problems, like people who promote learning myths, for example. As a community, it's much easier to identify those and then find ways to tackle them. And to some extent, I'm grateful that we are facilitating those connections, and then showing them that learning can happen differently online. And that's very cool to see as well, just to see how people have changed their perspectives about social learning or online learning or peer reviews, which people have bad experiences with and they stop doing it. But hopefully in the course we also teach people or show people that peer reviews can be better than they were used to, or then something that set a really bad paradigm for them. So yeah, I think changing perspectives and creating connections is the answer that I have.
Fair enough. And that's probably a good thing you didn't name an individual, because then everyone else would have been mad at you on the internet. So a very smart way of answering that question. What I've definitely loved so far has been seeing about how far the reach has spread of this course, which is nuts, because I'll have people reach out to me saying that they took the course and they're in a completely different time zone than I will be, because we'll have people who have taken it from Thailand, Japan, Pakistan, India. And like I was saying before, I was just like, why are you at this webinar? It's 3 a.m. your time. It's 1 a.m. It's midnight. It's like, what are you doing? And to see then from there, but they're like, oh no, but I told my friend so-and-so they have to take it next. And then you get this new wave of the cohort from everybody from word of mouth of this was awesome, you need to take it, which of course is like the highest compliment one can get, is you liked it so much you told someone else they had to go and do it. Then like, that's just amazing.
And I mean, they talk about like in marketing, we've got a net promoter score, and that's something we have for the course as well. But the net promoter score is how likely are you to recommend this to other people? And there's no better expression of a healthy net promoter score than to see people literally recommending or coming to the course because someone told them that they should come and do it.
Right.
And we've started seeing like entire L&D onboarding teams being enrolled in the Eduflow Academy courses. So, like let's say a new cohort of some agency or e-learning agency have just started working there. And part of their onboarding program would be to go through an Eduflow Academy course, which is super cool to see that like young instructional designers are getting this impression of what online learning is before they even start their careers. And then hopefully that sets the tone for them to show them that this is a different way of doing it, and maybe we can take some of these ideas into what we're doing in the real world. Absolutely.
So what's next for you? You've done a lot. You just talked a little bit about the social learning type of course.
Yes.
If you want to dive into that more, but I'm just curious what you have in the horizon.
So for the last few months, we've been working on a new course called Designing Social Learning Experiences. And that's pretty much where we explore this really new, I want to say new, even though it's as old as we are, as humanity is social learning, but we really try to figure out what, let me start over. Social learning is very different. Social learning can be a conversation that you have with someone by the water cooler, or it could be a facilitated jigsaw exercise. The challenge is how do you design a learning experience for both of those situations? And in the course, we work together to explore principles and frameworks and strategies that we can use to accommodate each of those different situations. So people come in with a pilot project idea that they have in mind in week one. And then the first task in week one is to convince you write an email where you convince stakeholders to buy into your project, because that is one of the biggest barriers we've identified with our research into why social learning doesn't happen in the workplace. So the first job is tell people what social learning is and convince them to buy into your project. And then the second week we talk about what we call 4 engines of collaborative learning. And the 4 engines are strategies that inform different tactics depending on a context. So this is where addressing that challenge comes in that we spoke about earlier. And then the third module is about measuring and implementing your social learning initiative. Because if you run your pilot project, you need to find a way to make sure that, or to report how successful it is and what the impact was, and hopefully that will get further buy-in that you can then send to the, or buy-in that'll have better impact on the likelihood that your social learning program will continue in the future.
Cool. Love it, man. I love it. Well, hey, man, let's wrap this up. Where can people go to find you, learn more about you, and all the things that you're doing?
Cool. So firstly, Luke, thank you so much for having me over.
Of course, having you over. Yeah, having you over for coffee. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I have my water, and it's been nice to share a drink with you. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. firstly, you can find Eduflow. I'm sure everyone's going to be looking for Eduflow stuff. So to learn more about all the different things we're doing on the Eduflow Academy side, you can go to Eduflow, eduflow.com/academy. And then we have our Eduflow blog, which is eduflow.com/blog. And then I think if you want to reach out to me, it's probably easiest to find me on LinkedIn. I'm not as active on Twitter. I think, LinkedIn is where I live pretty much. So just search William Cronje on LinkedIn and you'll find me.
And all you need to do is just refresh your feed and someone's going to tag you. I mean, that's really all you need to do. Eventually, it's very clear when the cohort wraps up, and then all of a sudden it's just like 700 notifications of just like, woohoo. It's like, okay, I guess the cohort has just finished their program. Like, yay. Well, awesome. Well, hey, man, thank you once again for coming on. It's been great. You have really helped me as far as for being a designer, of going through all these different types of courses, learning experiences. It's been a lot of fun. So I can't wait to see where you're going next of everything for Eduflow, and of course where you as a person are going as well too within your own career, because you keep on following and sharing more and more different types of insightful posts. So it's been really cool. So hey man, once again, just thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks so much, Luke.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode with William. Be sure to connect with him over on LinkedIn. We also talked a lot about the Instructional Design Principles for Course Creation program. And if you are a newbie in instructional design and you're curious about where do you just start with this entire journey, I would highly recommend taking this course first. It's free. It's a cohort-based, as we talked about as well too. So be sure to apply for that one. The next cohort does start after the holidays. It starts in later on in January. Go down below into the show notes to find that link and apply for that one. And of course, if you ever have any questions, you can obviously reach out to myself or William, and we're happy to help you out. Speaking of Eduflow too, if you are looking for a learning platform, or if your organization is looking for a learning platform, I really can't recommend Eduflow enough. A number of you have asked me about what learning management system do I use. I do use Eduflow. Full disclosure, I am an affiliate with Eduflow because of how much I really do like the product and what it makes my learning experiences transform into. So if you are looking for a learning platform, once again, go down below into the show notes, click on that guy. Any support that you give over to Eduflow supports this independent podcast, so greatly appreciate your support. But folks, that is all I have for you. I hope you have safe travels for the holiday that is coming up, spending time with your friends, family, and loved ones. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, to the podcast, and for everything else that I have currently going on with the internet. But folks, most importantly, stay nerdy out there, and I'll talk to you next time.